Do you have a bad habit? You probably do. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to get rid of bad habits once and for all by tripping the trigger. So keep watching to discover this simple step-by-step process. Now, wouldn't you agree that it's a simple fact that every person on this planet has a bad habit or will develop one at some point in their life? Habits are created because of certain acts that you repeat, and when your mind and your body become accustomed to it, these habits become well established and are difficult to break. Usually habits are harmless and can even be productive because they pave the way toward learning. It is only when they become counterproductive and affect your development that habits need to be changed. So now, let me ask you again, are you guilty of a bad habit? Now, let's take a look at some of the most common habits that people have. Procrastination, negative thinking, impulsiveness, complacency, implementing false limits, bad personal hygiene, and overall unhealthy physical habits. Procrastination is one of the most popular habits that people develop. It is also one of the most damaging, although most of the effects are felt at a later stage. When you fall into the habit of procrastination, you tend to avoid certain tasks, either because these tasks are too difficult, too easy, or just simply uncomfortable. Sometimes when the habit is so well established, avoidance becomes automatic, regardless of the level of difficulty of the task. The result? Wasted time and lost opportunities. Negative thinking often becomes a regular habit after you have had experiences that were difficult or painful. Often there is a sense of failure or doom that causes this negative attitude. You tend to view and treat things as if they are worthless, unsuccessful, and a total waste of your time, regardless of their real value. Once you develop the habit of negative thinking, you will often find it difficult to see the good points and would rather dwell on the negative aspects of everything in your life. Another regular habit that can be costly is impulsiveness. Often this happens when you haven't been able to develop a good sense of maturity and acceptance. It becomes difficult to learn to stand back, take a moment to think and decide, and then take action. The first thought that comes to mind is often considered the best choice, and then you act on this thought, unmindful and not caring about the consequences. Complacency is often characterized by submissiveness, the tendency to stand back and be content. When you become complacent, you tend to be self-satisfied with yourself and your present condition, never venturing out to see what else in your environment that there is to offer. When you're complacent, you are the complete opposite of being a go-getter. You tend to dislike change and would rather stay within the boundaries of your comfort zones. You might be or probably know people who are afraid to go beyond what they have established to be true and effective, and they tend to implement false limits upon themselves. At this point, this habit limits their perspective of things and makes them refuse to accept certain truths and take advantage of certain opportunities. In their minds, it's often difficult to go beyond these boundaries and exert more effort because, as they often believe, it's just not done. They think that whatever effort they give will be ineffective and unsafe. Now, some regular habits that involve personal hygiene are often taught and learned in early childhood. Sometimes they may also be reinforced later in life, when you learn about their benefits. All of the same, if you fail to develop personal hygiene, it not only becomes a health risk, it also becomes a reflection of your character. However, unlike most regular bad habits, this type of habit is probably the easiest to change, considering that most people usually develop an awareness of themselves that often translates later into self-care and development. Sometimes, social factors such as shame and embarrassment can also help bring about a change in these habits. Certain habits affect health in a negative way, such as smoking, drinking, and excessive eating. These habits may be developed early in life. Overeating and junk food is a great example of this at an early age. Or they may be acquired later. Bad habits such as smoking, drinking, or taking drugs. They become a problem when they turn into addiction or begin to threaten your physical health. Habits such as these may or may not be accompanied by an emotional cause or attachment, but they become so well established that they often become one of the most difficult to break. We will continue to discuss these habits and more in upcoming videos, but for now, let's move on how to get rid of bad habits once and for all by tripping the trigger. The best thing you can do is to accept that you and most people you know have bad habits. For most, these bad habits aren't recognized and the person isn't even aware that they have one. However, these bad habits can be eliminated, whether you are currently aware of them or not. Let's go through how to do this step by step. Number 1, identify your bad habit. It's true that you may not be aware of your bad habits, but this isn't a good excuse for not changing bad habits. You only realize that you have to eliminate bad habits when they are or become destructive. The point here is that changing bad habits isn't as simple as 1, 2, 3. One of the greatest factors that need to be considered is that you have to become fully aware of your bad habit. The logic is simple. How can you eliminate something you aren't aware of? And this doesn't necessarily mean simply identifying the bad habit per se. This includes identifying the negative sides of the habit in general. Once identified, things will be clear in your mind and you will be able to understand why such activities are classified as bad habits. Number 2, identify the culprit. Experts say that bad habits don't happen overnight. Like anything else, there must be some reason or factor that trigger the habit to occur. Hence, the next step in eliminating a bad habit is to identify the culprit. What triggers your bad habit? Of course, you don't pull your hair out for no reason at all, right? Not even smokers like the smell of cigarette smoke. You see, every bad habit has a trigger that sets off anxieties and stress. Just think of it this way. In most cases, people who smoke would normally say that smoking aids in muscle relaxation or eases the tension that builds up whenever they are in a tricky situation. These are what you would call the triggers, or the very things that compel you to be engaged in bad habits. More simply put, stress is the major culprit. People are engaged in bad habits whenever they are stressed, burned out, anxious, or agitated. Some people may also show signs of boredom or negative emotional states. By simply identifying these things that trigger bad habits, it will be easier for you to come up with solutions that will effectively eliminate these bad habits. Step number 3, act now. What good does it do if after identifying the trigger you still remain passive about it? The important thing is that you have to act and make some deliberate changes. It isn't enough that you know the enemy and still let that enemy bother you. In order to effect bad habit changes, you need to make changes. For example, if you know that boredom sparks nail biting, then it would be best if you go out for a walk, chat with some friends, or indulge in things that you find satisfying, like eating ice cream. The main point here is that by simply staying away from the things that trigger your bad habits, it will be easier for you to keep yourself away from such activities. The idea is to cut the urge that is building inside of you and drives you every time you are within the influence of those triggers. Number 4, replacements. The next step is to find replacements. Of course, you may not immediately break the habit in a short time. You may even find yourself going back to it over and over again. The best way to break the habit is to replace it with a good habit. For example, instead of pulling your hair every time you are in a stressful situation, why not find other things that will release your energy? You may use a rubber ball instead and squeeze it as you try to pass the stressful situation. Tripping the trigger and eliminating the culprit in bad habit formation is just a matter of diverting your attention to things that will provide you satisfaction or relief, but in a less troubling manner. In time, you will be surprised at how much you have improved and eliminated the bad habit once and for all. So, work on your ability to trip the trigger. Just follow these steps and you will surely find yourself in a much better situation. Remember, don't be too hard on yourself when you first start. Just work through the steps and keep at it, and change will start to happen. Bad habits took time to come about, and they will take just as much time, and in some cases, more time to fix. Just keep working and go step by step to turning the bad ones into better ones. Now, be sure to comment below with your bad habit to start step number 1 and identify your bad habit today. Also, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell for future updates on new videos. Let's keep working on repairing your bad habits and turning them into good habits that will last you a lifetime.